Layla stepped into the quiet, softly lit hospice care room, her expression calm, but her heart steady with purpose. She had worked tirelessly to earn her role as a caregiver, a vocation born from years of determination and resilience. Growing up in foster homes, Layla had long ago learned to make peace with life's uncertainties, channeling her hardships into an unwavering drive to help others. To her, every patient deserved compassion, a chance to feel cared for, even in their darkest hours. That morning, Layla was given a new assignment: an elderly man named Elias, who had been unconscious for months after a severe stroke. Rumors swirled among the staff about his identity. Some whispered he was a once-renowned musician. Others hinted at an estranged family. Yet, within the pale walls of the hospice, Elias was just another soul in need of care. To Layla, his past didn't matter. What mattered was the present, and her role in making it as gentle as possible. Over the next several weeks, Layla found herself forming a quiet routine around Elias's care. She would read aloud from old novels, hum soothing melodies, and ensure his room was always warm and peaceful. Though Elias showed no signs of waking, Layla often felt that even the smallest acts of kindness reached him in some unspoken way. She believed deeply in the intangible threads that connected human hearts, conscious or not. One afternoon, as Layla adjusted Elias's bedding, she noticed something unusual: a faint, crescent-shaped scar on the side of his neck. Her hand hesitated, her thoughts suddenly rushing to a similar mark she bore on her own shoulder. For as long as she could remember, Layla had imagined stories about the scar, pretending it was a symbol of a bond to someone she might never meet. A surge of curiosity filled her. She brushed aside the thought as mere coincidence, but it lingered as she continued her duties. Then, without warning, Elias's fingers twitched. Layla's breath caught. A moment later, his eyelids flickered, and he let out a soft, broken sound, as though awakening from a distant dream. "Mr. Elias," she said gently, moving closer. "Can you hear me? You're safe. You're in hospice care." Elias's eyes opened slowly, his gaze unfocused at first. As he adjusted to the light, his eyes locked on Layla, his expression shifting from confusion to something deeper, a strange recognition. His lips parted, trembling as though trying to speak. "Layla," he whispered, his voice cracked, but weighted with emotion. Layla froze. "No," she said carefully, her pulse quickening. "My name is Layla. I don't think we've met before." Elias shook his head weakly, tears forming in his tired eyes. You look so much like her." "Layla. Was your mother's name Layla?" Layla's chest tightened. "No, but my grandmother often mentioned someone named Layla in the stories she told me growing up. I never met her. My mother passed away when I was very young," she added, her voice soft. Elias's face crumpled, grief etched into every line. "Layla was the woman I loved long ago," he said, his words thick with sorrow. "We were separated, circumstances. I thought I'd lost her forever. But she never told me about a child." Layla's heart raced as she processed his words. She felt as if the air around her had grown heavier. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias's gaze softened, though his pain was palpable. "If Layla was your grandmother's name, and your mother, it's possible," he said, his voice trembling. "You might be my blood, my family." Layla stared at him, her mind reeling with questions. The faint hum of the machines around them seemed to fade as the moment took hold. Could this man, this stranger, truly be connected to her in a way she never expected? If so, what did it mean for her own story, the one she thought she knew? As the weight of Elias's revelation settled over her, Layla found herself caught between disbelief and an unspoken hope. Somewhere deep inside, she wondered if life had brought her here, to this room, for a reason she was only beginning to understand. Elias's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Layla struggled to process the enormity of what he had just said. "Are you telling me that you're my father?" she whispered, her voice unsteady as a storm of emotions churned within her. Shock, disbelief, and a flicker of hope she couldn't quite name. Elias nodded slowly, his expression a blend of sorrow, and longing. I had no idea. I never knew. If I'd known, if your mother had told me, I would have moved heaven and earth to be there for you. His voice cracked under the weight of regret. Layla stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed. She stared at the man she had known only as a patient, the one she had cared for without question, now revealed as something so much more. Her mind raced back to the nights she had spent as a child, imagining the father she had never met, a figure who was always kind, protective, and steady. She had filled the void with dreams and questions, but now, that void was being filled with a truth she hadn't dared to hope for. Elias extended a trembling hand toward her, his eyes pleading for a connection. Slowly, cautiously, Layla stepped forward and allowed him to pull her into an embrace. Though frail, his hold was filled with an intensity that conveyed years of unspoken sorrow and a fierce need to make up for the past. "Layla," he murmured, his voice breaking, "you've given me something I thought I'd lost. A reason to live, a chance to put right what I've missed. Please, let me be the father I should have been." Tears welled up in Layla's eyes, but she forced herself to ask, her voice barely a whisper, Do you have anything of hers? Any photos of my mother? I don't remember her face anymore." Elias's face softened, a mix of pain and tenderness washing over him. He nodded. "Yes," he said hoarsely, motioning toward the small drawer beside his bed. "My phone, it's in there. Please take it." Layla retrieved the phone, her hands shaking as she handed it to him. With deliberate slowness, Elias unlocked the screen and scrolled through the gallery. Layla leaned closer, and suddenly, images filled the screen. Photographs of a vibrant young woman with a radiant smile. Her mother. Layla's breath hitched as she recognized the face she had only seen in fragments of memory. The laughter, the kindness, and the warmth in her mother's eyes seemed to leap out from the photos, as though they were speaking directly to her. Tears rolled down Layla's cheeks as she took in every detail. It felt as though pieces of herself she hadn't even realized were missing were falling into place. She turned to Elias, her voice trembling. I believe you. You really are my father." Elias's eyes brimmed with tears as he reached for her hands. "Layla, I can never undo the years you spent without me, but I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel alone again. You are my daughter, my family. You are everything." From that moment on, their relationship began to blossom. Elias's recovery, once slow and uncertain, gained new momentum. Layla visited him daily, not as a nurse, but as a daughter eager to know the man she had been separated from for so long. They shared stories of her childhood, of her mother's life, and of the dreams they now held for the future. Weeks later, Elias was strong enough to leave the hospice. He insisted Layla visit the modest house he had called home in recent years, wanting to share a glimpse of his world with her. Though the home wasn't grand, it was filled with warmth and memories, photos, handwritten notes, and mementos of the life he had built, each one now a bridge to the family he had rediscovered. One evening, as they sat together on the back porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Elias turned to Layla. "You've given me more than a second chance," he said softly. "You've shown me that even when life takes everything away, it can still offer you something beautiful in return." Layla smiled through her tears, her heart swelling with an unfamiliar, yet welcome sense of belonging. She squeezed his hand, knowing that their journey as father and daughter was just beginning. Together, they began to weave the threads of their new life, one conversation, one shared moment at a time. For the first time in years, Layla felt at peace, knowing she was no longer searching for the missing pieces of her story. Instead, she was creating a new one, filled with love, reconciliation, and the promise of what was yet to come. The days that followed Elias's discharge marked a new chapter in both his and Layla's lives. Their bond grew steadily, woven from shared moments that were as simple as sitting together on quiet evenings and as profound as diving into the stories of their past. For Layla, it was like learning a new language, a language of belonging and trust, one she had never fully known before. For Elias, It was a chance to reclaim a part of himself he thought had been lost forever. One evening, as the sky burned with the colors of sunset, Elias suggested they visit a nearby park. "It was one of your mother's favorite places," he said softly. "We used to sit by the lake and talk for hours. I want you to see it." Layla agreed, intrigued by the chance to connect with her mother in some intangible way. When they arrived, the park was serene, its winding paths shaded by old oaks. The lake stretched out like a sheet of glass, its surface catching the last rays of daylight. They sat on a weathered bench near the water's edge, and Elias pulled a small, worn notebook from his pocket. "This," he said, handing it to Layla, "belonged to your mother. She gave it to me during the last summer we spent together. I found it years later, tucked away in a box. It's the only thing of hers I kept, but I think it's time you have it." Layla's hands trembled as she took the notebook. Its faded cover and fraying edges spoke of years gone by, yet its presence felt alive, as if her mother's essence lingered within its pages. She opened it carefully, finding handwritten poems, sketches, and notes, glimpses of a vibrant, creative spirit she longed to know. As she read aloud one of the poems, Elias leaned back, his eyes misty with nostalgia. "She was always writing," he said, his voice warm with memory. "She had this way of turning the smallest moments into something magical. I see that in you too, the way you bring life to everything around you." Layla looked up from the notebook, her heart swelling with a mixture of grief and gratitude. For so long, she had lived with the ache of not knowing where she came from, of feeling untethered in the world. But now, in the quiet of the park with her father by her side and her mother's words in her hands, she felt grounded. She felt whole. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For this. For everything. I didn't think I'd ever get to know her like this. Or you." Elias reached over and took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "And I didn't think I'd ever get a second chance. To know you, to make things right. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Layla, but I promise you, I will spend the rest of my days being the father you deserve." Their conversation was interrupted by the soft rustle of wind through the trees, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of children laughing. The world around them felt alive, as if bearing witness to their reunion and offering its quiet blessing. As the weeks turned into months, Layla and Elias continued to rebuild their lives together. Elias's health improved steadily, fueled by his newfound purpose, and Layla found herself growing more confident in her own identity. She began to explore her love for art, inspired by the sketches in her mother's notebook. With her father's encouragement, she started painting, often capturing moments from their shared memories. One afternoon, as she worked on a portrait of her mother from an old photo Elias had shared, he came to stand behind her. "She would be so proud of you," he said, his voice soft yet certain. "And so am I." Tears welled up in Layla's eyes as she looked at the portrait and then at her father. She realized then that life wasn't about erasing the pain of the past, but about weaving it into the fabric of the present, transforming it into something beautiful and whole. Though their journey was far from over, Layla and Elias had found a way to heal together, one day at a time. And as they sat side by side in the small home they now shared, surrounded by love and the stories they were still writing, they knew this was only the beginning.